Armenia lies in the highlands surrounding the biblical mountains of Ararat. The original Armenian name for the country was Hayk, later Hayastan, translated as the land of Hayk, and consisting of the name of the ancient Mesopotamian god Haya and the Persian suffix stan. The historical enemy of Hayk, Hayastan, was Baal, or in other words Baal. The word Baal is named in the Bible at Isaiah chapter 46 verse 1 and Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 2 and 51 to 44. The name Armenia was given to the country by the surrounding states, and it is traditionally derived from Armenic or Aram. In the Bronze Age, several states flourished in the area of Greater Armenia, including the Hittite Empire, Mitanni, and Hayastan. Soon after the Hayastan were the Neri and the Kingdom of Urartu, who successively established the sovereignty over the Armenian highland. Each of the aforementioned nations and tribes participated in the ethnogenesis of the Armenian people. Yerevan, the modern capital of Armenia, dates back to the 8th century BC, with the founding of the fortress of Erebuni in 782 BC by King Ürgüç I at the western extreme of the Ararat plain. Erebuni has been described as designed as a great administrative and religious center, a fully royal capital. The Iron Age kingdom of Urartu was replaced by the Arratid dynasty, following Persian and subsequent Macedonian rule. The Artaxid dynasty from 190 BC gave rise to the Kingdom of Armenia, which rose to the peak of its influence under Tigranes II before falling under Roman rule. In 301, Arsacid Armenia was the first sovereign nation to accept Christianity as a state religion. The Armenians later fell under Byzantine, Sassanid Persian, and Islamic hegemony, but reinstated their independence with the Bagratuni dynasty Kingdom of Armenia. After the fall of the kingdom in 1045, and the subsequent Seljuk conquest of Armenia in 1064, the Armenians established a kingdom in Cilicia, where they prolonged the sovereignty to 1375. Starting in the early 16th century, Great Armenia came under Safavid Persian rule. However, over the centuries Eastern Armenia remained under Persian rule while Western Armenia fell under Ottoman rule. By the 19th century, Eastern Armenia was conquered by Russia and Greater Armenia was now divided between the Ottoman and Russian Empire. In the early 20th century, Armenians suffered in the genocide inflicted on them by the Ottoman government, in which 1.5 million Armenians were killed and many more dispersed throughout the world via Syria and Lebanon. Armenia, from then on corresponding to much of Eastern Armenia, regained independence in 1918, with the establishment of the First Republic of Armenia, and in 1991, the Republic of Armenia. Prehistory. Stone tools from 325,000 years ago have been found in Armenia which indicate the presence of early humans at this time. In the 1960s, excavations in the Yerevan 1 cave uncovered evidence of ancient human habitation, including the remains of a 48,000-year-old heart, and a human cranial fragment and tooth of a similar age. The Armenian highland shows traces of settlement from the Neolithic era. Archaeological surveys in 2010 and 2011 have resulted in the discovery of the world's earliest known leather shoe, straw skirt, and winemaking facility at the Areni 1 cave complex. The Shuliveri Shomu culture of the Central Transcaucasus region is one of the earliest known prehistoric culture in the area, carbon dated to roughly 6000–4000 BC. Bronze Age. An early Bronze Age culture in the area is the Kuro-Araxes culture, assigned to the period of c. 4000–2200 BC. The earliest evidence for this culture is found on the Ararat plain, thence it spread to Georgia by 3000 BC. proceeding westward and to the southeast into an area below the Urmia Basin and Lake Van. The name Armenian was firstly recorded on an inscription which mentions Armani together with Ibla, from territories conquered by Naram Sin, identified with an Akkadian colony in the current region of Dyubkia. To this day, the Assyrians still refer to the Armenians by the name Armani. The word is also thought to be related to the Manians and to the biblical Mini. The earliest forms of the word Hayastan, an ethnonym the Armenians used to designate their country, come from Hittite sources of the Late Bronze Age, such as the kingdom of Hayastan. Another record mentioned by Pharaoh Thutmose III of Egypt in the 33rd year of his reign as the people of Armenian, and says in the land heaven rests upon its four pillars. Between 1500 to 1200 BC, the Hayastan existed in the western half of the Armenian highland, often clashing with the Hittite Empire. Between 1200 to 800 BC, much of Armenia was united under a confederation of kingdoms, which Assyrian sources called Neri. Iron Age. The kingdom of Urartu flourished between the 9th century BC in 585 BC in the Armenian highland. The founder of the Urartian kingdom, Aramay, united all the principalities of the Armenian highland and gave himself the title King of Kings, the traditional title of Urartian kings. The Urartians established the sovereignty over all of Turan and Vaspurakan. The main rival of Urartu was the Neo-Assyrian Empire. During the reign of Sa'd-Uri, Urartu had become a strong and organized state, and imposed taxes to neighboring tribes. Sa'd-Uri made Tushpa the capital of Urartu. His son, Ishpuanis, extended the borders of the state by conquering what would later be known as the Tigran-Seta area and by reaching Urmia. Menuas extended the Urartian territory up north by spreading towards the Araratian fields. He left more than 90 inscriptions by using the Mesopotamian cuneiform scriptures in the Urartian language. Argishtis of Urartu conquered Latakia from the Hittites and reached Byblos and Phoenicia. He built the Erebuni fortress, located in modern-day Yerevan, in 782 BC by using 6,600 prisoners of war. In 714 BC, the Assyrians under Sargon II defeated the Urartian king Rusa I at Lake Urmia and destroyed the holy Urartian temple at Musizia. At the same time, an Indo-European tribe called the Cimmerians attacked Urartu from the northwest region and destroyed the rest of his armies. Under Ashurbanipal, the boundaries of the Assyrian Empire reached as far as Armenia and the Caucasus Mountains. The Medes under Cyaxares invaded Assyria later on in 612 BC, and then took over the Urartian capital of Van towards 585 BC, effectively ending the sovereignty of Urartu. According to the Armenian tradition, the Medes helped the Armenians establish the Oroted dynasty. Antiquity. Oroted dynasty. After the fall of Urartu around 585 BC, the satrapy of Armenia was ruled by the Armenian Oroted dynasty, which governed the state in 585-190 BC. Under the Orotids, Armenia during this era was a satrapy of the Persian Empire, and after its disintegration, it became an independent kingdom. During the rule of the Orotid dynasty, most Armenians adopted the Zoroastrian religion. Artaxia dynasty. After the destruction of the Seleucid Empire, a Hellenistic Armenian state was founded in 190 BC. It was a Hellenistic successor state of Alexander the Great's short-lived empire, with Artaxias becoming its first king and the founder of the Artaxid dynasty. At the same time, a western portion of the kingdom split as a separate state under Zariadri, which became known as Lesser Armenia, while the main kingdom acquired the name of Greater Armenia. The new kings began a program of expansion which was to reach its zenith a century later. Their acquisitions are summarized by Strabo. Zariadri acquired Asulacene and the country around the Anti-Taurus, possibly the district of Misra west of the Euphrates. Artaxias took lands from the Medes, Iberians, and Syrians. He then had confrontations with Pontus, Seleucids, Syria and Cappadocia, and was included in the treaty which followed the victory of a group of Anatolian kings over Pharnaces of Pontus in 181 BC. Pharnaces thus abandoned all of his gains in the west. At its zenith, from 95 to 66 BC, Great Armenia extended its rule over parts of the Caucasus and the area that is now eastern and central Turkey, northwestern Iran, Israel, Syria and Lebanon, forming the Second Armenian Empire. For a time, Armenia was one of the most powerful states east of Rome. It eventually confronted the Roman Republic in wars, which it lost in 66 BC, but nonetheless preserved its sovereignty. Tigranes continued to rule Armenia as an ally of Rome until his death in 55 BC. The Third Mithridatic War and defeat of the king of Pontus by Roman Pompeius resulted in the Kingdom of Armenia becoming an allied client state of Rome. Later on, in 01 AD, Armenia came under full Roman control until the establishment of the Armenian Arsacid dynasty. The Armenian people then adopted a Western political, philosophical, and religious orientation. According to Strabo, around this time everyone in Armenia spoke the same language. Roman Armenia. From Pompeius's campaign, Armenia was, for the next few centuries, contested between Rome and Parthia. Sassanid Persia on the other hand. Roman Emperor Trajan created even a short-lived province of Armenia between 114–118 AD. Indeed, Roman supremacy was fully established by the campaigns of Gnaeus Domitius Corbulo, that ended with a formal compromise. A Parthian prince of the Arsacid line would henceforth sit on the Armenian throne, but his nomination had to be approved by the Roman emperor. Because this agreement was not respected by the Parthian Empire, in 114 Trajan from Antiochia in Syria marched on Armenia and conquered the capital Artaxata. Trajan then deposed the Armenian king Parthamazires and ordered the annexation of Armenia to the Roman Empire as a new province. The new province reached the shores of the Caspian Sea and bordered to the north with Caucasian Iberia and Caucasian Albania, two vassal states of Rome. As a Roman province, Armenia was administered by Catilius Severus of the gens Claudia. After Trajan's death, however, his successor Hadrian decided not to maintain the province of Armenia. In 118 AD, Hadrian gave Armenia up, and installed Parthamaspates as its vassal king. Arsacid dynasty Armenia, under its Ashikuni dynasty, which was a branch of the eponymous Arsacid dynasty of Parthia, was often a focus of contention between Rome and Parthia. The Parthians forced Armenia into submission from 37 to 47, when the Romans retook control of the kingdom. Under Nero, the Romans fought a campaign against the Parthian Empire, which had invaded the kingdom of Armenia, allied to the Romans. After gaining and losing Armenia, the Romans under Gnaeus Domitius Corbulo, legate of Syria, entered into an agreement of Vologases I of Parthia, which confirmed Tiridates I as king of Armenia, thus founding the Ashikuni dynasty. The Arsacid dynasty lost control of Armenia for a few years when Emperor Trajan created the Roman province of Armenia, fully included into the Roman Empire from 114 to 117 AD. His successor Hadrian reinstalled the Arsacid dynasty when nominated Parthamaspates as vassal king of Armenia in 118 AD. Another campaign was led by Emperor Lucius Verus in 162 to 165. After Vologases IV of Parthia had invaded Armenia and installed his chief general on its throne, to counter the Parthian threat, Verus set out for the east. His army won significant victories and retook the capital. Sohemus, a Roman citizen of Armenian heritage, was installed as the new client king. The Sassanid Persians occupied Armenia in 252 and held it until the Romans returned in 287. In 384 the kingdom was split between the Byzantine or East Roman Empire and the Persians. Western Armenia quickly became a province of the Roman Empire under the name of Armenia Minor. Eastern Armenia remained a kingdom within Persia until 428, when the local nobility overthrew the king, and the Sassanids installed a governor in his place. According to tradition, the Armenian Apostolic Church was established by two of Jesus's 12 apostles, Thaddeus and Bartholomew, who preached Christianity in Armenia in the 40s, 60s AD. Between 1st and 4th centuries AD, the Armenian Church was headed by patriarchs. Christianization. In 301, Armenia became the first nation to adopt Christianity as a state religion. Amidst the long-lasting geopolitical rivalry over the region, it established a church that today exists independently of both the Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox churches, having become so in 451 after having rejected the Council of Chalcedon. The Armenian Apostolic Church is a part of the Oriental Orthodox Communion, not to be confused with the Eastern Orthodox Communion. The first Catholicos of the Armenian Church was St. Gregory the Illuminator. Because of his beliefs, he was persecuted by the pagan king of Armenia, and was punished by being thrown in Korv Arap in modern-day Armenia. He acquired the title of Illuminator because he illuminated the spirits of Armenians by introducing Christianity to them. Before this, the dominant religion amongst the Armenians was Zoroastrianism. It seems that the Christianization of Armenia by the Arsacids of Armenia was partly in defiance of the Sassanids. In 405–06, Armenia's political future seemed uncertain. With the help of the king of Armenia, Mesopotamian, a unique alphabet was created to suit the people's needs. By doing so, he ushered a new golden age and strengthened Armenian national identity. After years of rule, the Arsacid dynasty fell in 428, with eastern Armenia being subjugated to Persia and western Armenia to Rome. In the 5th century, the Sassanid Shah Yazdegerd II tried to tie his Christian Armenian subjects more closely to the Sassanid Empire by reimposing the Zoroastrian religion. The Armenians greatly resented this, and as a result, a rebellion broke out with Vartan Mamukonian as the leader of the rebels. Yazdegerd thus massed his army and sent it to Armenia, where the Battle of Ararat took place in 451. The 66,000 Armenian rebels, mostly peasants, lost the morale when Mamukonian himself died in the battlefield. They were substantially outnumbered by the 180,000–220,000 strong Persian army of immortals and war elephants. Despite being a military defeat, the Battle of Ararat and the subsequent guerrilla war in Armenia eventually resulted in the Treaty of Navarsak, which guaranteed religious freedom to the Armenians. Persian Armenia. With the partition of Armenia in 387 by the Byzantines and Sassanids, the western half became part of the Byzantines known as Byzantine Armenia, while the eastern became a vassal state within the Sassanid realm. In 428, the Arsacid dynasty of Armenia was completely abolished by the Sassanid Persians, and the territory was made a full province within Persia, known as Persian Armenia. Persian Armenia remained in Sassanid hands up to the Muslim conquest of Persia, when the invading Muslim forces annexed the Sassanid realm. Middle Ages. Arab caliphates, Byzantium and Bagratid Armenia in 591. The Byzantine Emperor Maurus defeated the Persians and recovered much of the remaining territory of of Armenia into the empire. The conquest was completed by the Emperor Heraclius, himself ethnically Armenian, in 629. In 645, the Muslim Arab armies of the Caliphate had attacked and conquered the country. Armenia, which once had its own rulers and was at other times under Persian and Byzantine control, passed largely into the power of the caliphs, and established the province of Armenia. Nonetheless, there were still parts of Armenia held within the empire, containing many Armenians. This population held tremendous power within the empire. The Emperor Heraclius was of Armenian descent, as was the Emperor Philippicus. The Emperor Basil I, who took the Byzantine throne in 867, was the first of what is sometimes called the Armenian dynasty, reflecting the strong effect the Armenians had on the Eastern Roman state. Evolving as a feudal kingdom in the 9th century, Armenia experienced a brief cultural, political and economic renewal under the Bagratuni dynasty. Bagratid Armenia was eventually recognized as a sovereign kingdom by the two major powers in the region, Baghdad in 885, and Constantinople in 886. Ani, the new Armenian capital, was constructed at the kingdom's apogee in 964. Ararat dynasty. The Iranian Ararat dynasty conquered parts of eastern Armenia in the second half of the 10th century. Seljuk Armenia, although the native Bagratuni dynasty was founded under favorable circumstances, the feudal system gradually weakened the country by eroding loyalty to the central government. Thus internally enfeebled, Armenia proved an easy victim for the Byzantines, who captured Ani in 1045. The Seljuk Turks under Alparslan in turn took the city in 1064. In 1071, after the defeat of the Byzantine forces by the Seljuk Turks at the Battle of Manzikert, the Turks captured the rest of Greater Armenia and much of Anatolia. So ended Christian leadership of Armenia for the next millennium, with the exception of a period of the late 12th early 13th centuries, when the Muslim power in Greater Armenia was seriously troubled by the resurgent Georgian monarchy. Many local nobles joined their efforts with the Georgians, leading to liberation of several areas in northern Armenia, which was ruled, under the authority of the Georgian crown, by the Zacharides Makagdzeli, a prominent Armeno-Georgian noble family. Armenian Kingdom of Cilicia, to escape death of servitude at the hands of those who had assassinated his relative Gagik II, king of Ani. An Armenian named Ropan with some of his countrymen went into the gorges of the Taurus Mountains and then into Tarsus of Cilicia. Here the Byzantine governor gave them shelter. Thus, from around 1080 to 1375, the focus of Armenian nationalism moved south as the Armenian Kingdom of Cilicia. After the members of the First Crusade appeared in Asia Minor, the Armenians developed close ties to European Crusader states. They flourished in southeastern Asia Minor until it was conquered by Muslim states. Count Baldwin, who with the rest of the Crusaders was passing through Asia Minor bound for Jerusalem, left the Crusader army and was adopted by Thoros of Edessa, an Armenian ruler of Greek Orthodox faith. As they were hostile towards the Seljuks and unfriendly to the Byzantines, the Armenians took kindly to the Crusader count. So when Thoros was assassinated, Baldwin was made ruler of the new Crusader county of Edessa. It seems that the Armenians were pleased with Baldwin's rule and with the Crusaders in general, and some number of them fought alongside the Crusaders. When Antioch had been taken, Constantine, the son of Ropan, received from the Crusaders the title of Baron. The Third Crusade and other events elsewhere left Cilicia as the sole substantial Christian presence in the Middle East. World powers, such as Byzantium, the Holy Roman Empire, the papacy and even the Abbasid Caliph competed and vied for influence over the state, and each raced to be the first to recognize Leo II, Prince of Lesser Armenia, as the rightful king. As a result, he had been given a crown by both German and Byzantine emperors. Representatives from across Christendom and a number of Muslim states attended the coronation, thus highlighting the important stature that Cilicia had gained over time. The Armenian authorities was often in touch with the Crusaders. No doubt the Armenians aided in some of the other crusades. Cilicia flourished greatly under Armenian rule, as it became the last remnant of medieval Armenian statehood. Cilicia acquired an Armenian identity, as the kings of Cilicia were called kings of the Armenians, not of the Cilicians. In Lesser Armenia, Armenian culture was intertwined with both the European culture of the Crusaders and with the Hellenic culture of Cilicia. As the Catholic families extended their influence over Cilicia, the Pope wanted the Armenians to follow Catholicism. This situation divided the kingdom's inhabitants between pro-Catholic and pro-apostolic camps. Armenian sovereignty lasted until 1375, when the Mamelukes of Egypt profited from the unstable situation in Lesser Armenia and destroyed it.